Hi folks, welcome to the channel, The Armchair Skeptic. My name is Rod and I'm the host of the show. In the video presentation today, I wanted to look at Darwinian evolutionary theory compared to what we refer to as intelligent design. The reason I want to do this is because even though intelligent design has a reputation of not being fully scientific, it is actually extremely popular, especially in the United States, where in fact in a recent poll it shows that almost 40% of people believe that the universe was created by some sort of higher authority, some sort of creator, and they dispute the value of the theory of the evolution. I suppose I should start by saying about evolution is that it's something, of course, that I support, and I think it would be very safe to say that the majority of scientists in the world, of all stripes, biologists, anatomists, you name it, philosophers, regard Darwin's evolutionary theory as absolute scientific fact. There's no dispute about it, and they would reject anything else that for an explanation of the varied life on Earth. So that's one point of view that most people would support. But I think it's probably good to have a look at intelligent design because it is relatively popular and it seems to have quite a lot of followers and quite a lot of money put into it. So what I want to do then is, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about Darwinian theory and the basis of intelligent design, and then I want to use a couple of species of animals and give an explanation of how they came to be through evolution, and another one how from the point of view of intelligent design. Okay, so Darwin evolutionary theory obviously began with Darwin and a few other people, we might say, and Wallace is another person that you should mention, but mainly Charles Darwin. Now, since Darwin, the theory has not only just been enhanced, it's been made a little bit more fruitful with the discovery of DNA, for example. We're able to distinguish between different species quite accurately in a way that's indisputable. So Darwinian theory has all the qualities of a good scientific theory. It evolves, it becomes more fruitful, it discovers, it adds to its knowledge continuously, and it has a very high predictive value. And so this is why I think that most scientists and almost most studies have a basis in evolution. Now let's go. Okay, having said that, and I don't need to say much more about evolution, most people understand what I'm talking about. Intelligent design is a little bit more complex. It's often presented, by the way, as some sort of dressed up form of creationism. And in a sense it is. It sort of believes it a little bit in the creation theory, but it is different. And I think we should give it a go and see what it says about the variety of life on Earth and how it came to be. I think to start, it might be a good idea to go delve a little bit into the history of where this might come from The name of William Paley comes up. He was an English minister who taught at, I think he taught at Cambridge University, and I think he lived till about 1805, sorry. And he was the person that we can contribute the watchmaker, and the much different analogy or metaphor. And the story goes, this is just very briefly, don't want to go into it in too much detail. He was walking through the moors, as they call them in England, which is like a parkland, and amongst all the natural things that he looked at, he found a watch. And he used that watch image, from there on in, to explain the fact, as he saw it, that the universe and all life was created by an intelligent designer. When you looked at the watch, there are a couple of features about the watch that he noticed. The first was that it wasn't a natural product. It was made up of different parts. The important thing about it, I think, was that it was a very complex. And when you looked at all the cogs and the wheels and the controls of the watch, you could see everything worked together to enable that watch to give you the time of day. So the term complexity is very important in the watchmaker image, if you like, and because it implies that the watch is of such complexity that even one of the tiny little cogs in it, if it stopped working, the whole thing would stop working. And that's, I think, really where intelligent design had its origins, and I think many of the publications of intelligent design do mention Paley with his watchmaker analogy. In fact, it's quite interesting. Richard Dawkins, in fact, one of his books was called The Blind Watchmaker, and we'll see why he did that afterwards. But anyway, as far as Paley was concerned, the watch could not have been produced by natural forces. It could not have been, produced by the laws of physics, or it had to be attributed to a designer. Okay, and fair enough, it was too. Okay, let's go on and now talk about modern day intellectual design, intelligent design. I think I just want to mention a few features of it which seem to be important. The first thing is it does sort of follow a creationist type approach. It believes that, for example, the Earth is. I think I've read this. So it's not every one of the intelligent designers accept this. The world's about 10,000 years old, and we know, that's nonsense. Modern dating method put the Earth back to 4 billion years, which is a lot more than 10,000. And that's very important. The second thing that intelligent design makes is that every species, and we mean species of animal or species of birds and vegetation, was created separately by God, and that every species is perfect in itself. And the intelligent designers have a term that they use quite often. This is irreducible complexity. And we look at the watch image, and so that what it means is that if a complex entity like a watch, or in this case like an animal species, is so complex and parts of it are so finely tuned to interact together that it is not possible to conceive of it as being caused by anything natural. So that an animal species, for example, is of irreducible complexity, they or you cannot reduce any one part of that species that's not operating will mean that the whole species won't operate, or the whole machine, whatever it might be. It's a very important concept, I think, in intelligent design. I think that the actual idea of irreducible complexity was gained from the philosophy of holism, and holism virtually states that a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Holism spells Holism, not with a W. And it has been a very popular theory in psychology and a few other areas of thought. But what it states simply is the same as irreducible complexity, that an entity, a complex entity, cannot be actually reduced to one of its parts, so that the parts of the complex entity interact in such a way that they enable that entity to exist, and that entity has qualities that the parts don't have. You might, for example, look at the image of water. We know it's made of two parts of hydrogen, one part oxygen atom, two hydrogen atoms, one oxygen atom. Now, hydrogen itself, we know all about hydrogen. It's explosive. They're making cars that run on hydrogen. Oxygen is a gas that supports combustion, if you like. But when you put the two together in H2O form, you get water, and water has neither of those qualities. And the qualities of water cannot be reduced to either oxygen or hydrogen. And that just gives an example of what they mean by this sort of irreducible complexity, you know. The other thing about intelligent design I think that I'll be looking at is that each animal is sort of perfect in itself. It is a special creation. Each species, I should mean, not just animal, each species is a separate creation, complete in itself. So there's no sense, like in evolution, that it continues to evolve because it's perfect. It doesn't need to evolve. There is no sense that it can be seen as being caused by natural processes like evolution. So intelligent designers actually reject the idea of evolution. They will accept some of them, some sort of change in individual species. I mean, for example, you can't deny that dogs are a wolf and that they've got so many different anatomical forms that you can't deny that there are differences, quite significant differences in individual species, and that would be accepted by most intelligent designers, I think. But so interspecific variation is okay, but it's when you get broader than that it's not okay. So there we have two quite different positions. I mean, as far as evolution is concerned, species evolve in a way that is not designed, or there is no purpose in it at all, and there's no creator. So what drives evolution, of course, is natural selection, and the animal is adapting to the environment it's in. It adapts in terms of the geography of the area, the climate of the area, the sort of prey that it has to get to survive. It has to adapt to that, and that in fact, those animals that survive in that environment for that reason will go on to breed and produce animals that can survive in that particular environment. Now, intelligent design doesn't have such doesn't accept that view at all. It just simply believes that the forces of nature can't produce such complexity. So in a sense, they start with complexity. So complexity. So a god is a complex individual, whatever he is, and he creates from the point of view. So complex things can't be seen as coming from less simple processes, but we do know from physics, I think, that every complex entity is caused by a more basic, simple processes. So it's less complex to more complex, whereas intellectual design sees it the other way around. I think probably there's a lot more that can be said about the differences between these two positions, but I want to just illustrate this by referring to 3 different animal species, so to get you thinking. Well, actually 4, but I just want to start, and I hope I can get the images up on the screen eventually when I edit this video. But the first species of animal, or in this case bird, I want to look at is a penguin. I'm very fond of penguins, and I have studied them quite a lot as a hobby actually, and it's quite interesting that a penguin is an unusual bird in that it does what most birds don't do. It actually operates in a different way than most birds. And if you look at the image of a penguin, and I hope I can get it up, you'll see a number of things about it that distinguish it from what we call birds, most of which fly. Now, penguin's not the only bird that doesn't fly. There are others like ostriches, emus, rheas, and a few other birds. But a penguin is unique in the sense that it sort of flies under the water, and it can't walk. Now, if you look carefully at a penguin, no matter what species of penguin you're looking at, you can see that it's very finely feathered. In other words, the whole body virtually is covered with these very fine, closely knit feathers. They're beautiful, actually. I felt them in fairy penguins. They're beautifully smooth, and they have a purpose, actually, of insulation. Feathers are very good insulators, as you know, and they also are slightly waterproof, the bird, actually. They have a quality of keeping the animal from getting soaked. The penguin, they also serve as insulation, because the penguin actually underneath has got a whole layer, quite a heavy layer of fat. A penguin is so heavy that it couldn't fly anyway. They're very heavy birds, and the heaviness of the fat layer gives them some sort of buoyancy in the water, and so they're important features. Now, getting to feathers, evolutionary wise, I mean, feathers are mostly used. Most birds fly. I mean, that's the truth. Most species of birds fly, and they have feathers which serve that purpose of helping them to fly. They can. They have on their wings. They have these flight feathers which help them get into the air. Their whole bone structure. If you look at eat a chicken, you can see that the bones are hollow and they're light and they're porous, unlike animals. If you're eating a lamb, you can see the bone is quite heavy and quite distinctly different from that of any bird, so that the bird is built for flying. Okay, so evolutionary wise, we've got this animal, this bird, this penguin has got to actually acquire a whole lot of, compensate for a whole lot of qualities that flying birds have. The first is the feathers, of course. Of course, feathers are will soak up water. They're easy to waterlog. If you have a chicken, as I have in your garden, in your backyard, if it gets into the water, even a small bit of water, it'll drown because the feathers absorb the water so much it increases the weight of the bird, it sinks. So I've saved many chickens from just getting into an ordinary cry. They can't swim. And their feathers are not very, and their feathers, make them sink. So I look, okay, water birds have got to deal with this. So they deal with this in a number of senses, like the penguin, the closely interlocked feathers, fine feathers, but most water birds have what's called a preening gland near their tail, and that preening gland produces a wax that the bird collects with its beak and spreads throughout its whole, preens itself throughout its body. So it's covering its feathers with a waterproof wax. And that's what you see a penguin doing that all the time. You see water birds doing it, ducks, they'll do it too. And so they're very, what's the word? They're very the feathers are very important for a bird like a penguin to be waterproof, obviously, and also to have some insulation because they live in cold climates. So that there has to be evolution to that point. And the bird also compensates for the light bones, the hollow bones of a bird, which the penguin has, by being so heavy, by having this heavy layer of fat, which makes it much more buoyant in the water. So they're the points a penguin has to compensate, if you like, for all of the qualities of flying birds that prevent them from swimming. The other point about a penguin is that it has wings, but the wings have changed their function from that of flying to that of acting like rudders or flippers, if you like. And if you look at the wings of a penguin, they've got no flight feathers anymore. They're just covered with those fine feathers, and they use those as flippers to get them through the water and get them beautifully through the water, actually. So that the function has, this happens in evolution. It's not just that an organ improves in its ability or changes. It changes its function. In this case, from that of flying to that of swimming or flying through the water. So that now the evolution of penguins can go back to something like 30 million years. So they're old. There used to be penguins that were taller than human beings are today, and they died out for various reasons of climate. And so penguins have a long image of evolution, which couldn't be compensated by by saying the world is 10,000 years old. So evolution is slow. This is one of the points that people don't seem to understand. It's very slow, and you've got to, 30 million years is a long time, and it's a long time. 10 million years, 10,000 years is nothing in evolutionary time at all. So I think evolution, by natural selection, can explain how penguins come to be like they are. Now there are many species of penguins and they're all different, but basically the template is the same. They look the same in many respects. Now when you get to intelligent design, you wonder what the designer had in mind. He designed a penguin. He chose a bird template, and then he had to somehow designed this bird template so it didn't act like a bird, that it could swim and that its feathers could change their quality, that it could make its feathers waterproof when they're not waterproof, and it changed the function of the wings. Now, I don't believe that intelligent design, I don't believe that you can say that the penguin is a perfect creation. They have to compensate for certain things, and so it's rather a weird design, isn't it? If you have this template that you have to, you have to change or adapt differently. So it's a rather strange form. I always think that about penguins and intelligent design. The other thing too about evolution is that evolution's an ongoing process. It doesn't stop. I mean, you can't see it happening, but because it's so slow. But in maybe 100,000 years, a penguin will look a whole lot different. Now, intelligent design can't allow for that, unless you have the designer constantly updating his design, and they don't talk about the designer updating the design all the time. And why would it, when the designer has produced a perfect creation, a perfect species? So there's no room in intelligent design for ongoing evolution of a species. So that's the penguin, and I leave it to you to make some comments to me about what you think, and maybe some intelligent designers can correct me. I just want to go on to another bird, which also interests me a lot, and that is another flightless bird, and it comes from the Galapagos Islands, and it's a cormorant. It's a flightless cormorant. It can't fly, and it's the only one of the 30 species of cormorant that can't fly. And it's the biggest. It's very big. That's part of the reason why it won't fly. It's too heavy. But it has adapted to its environment, if you look at it in terms of evolutionary theory, by changing its structure as well. I mean, it has... The way this animal survives is by swimming in the water, and by catching things like shrimp, squid. It eats a lot of small fish. It eats a lot of animals that are in the water, and it swims particularly well. But if you look at it carefully, the force of driving it is its feet, its legs. It's got enormous heavy legs and very big webbed feet, and they are the things that drive it through the water, and they can drive it quite effectively. You see, they're almost like penguins, not quite as good under the water as penguins, but they can maneuver themselves quite well, and they and all the driving forces, in fact, those enormous legs, webbed feet that it's got on the back. The wings have atrophies, as you'll see in the images. There still are vestiges of the flight feathers, but the wings are so small you couldn't imagine them getting this very heavy bird off the ground. And so it's a very interesting adaptation of a genus of birds. As I said, there's I think there's about 30 species of cormorants, and this is the only one that can't fly, and it's the biggest by quite a long way, actually, twice as big as the next size. And we go now to intelligent design. Now, the same thing applies here. Here is a bird that originally most birds flew, and it had to make all these adaptations to enable it to do what it does. And one would ask, I'm a bit lost, why would the designer design a flightless cormorant? He might design a flightless cormorant so it can be very effective in the water and survive that way. But it doesn't seem like a good idea to use a bird sampler to do what a cormorant does. Anyway, I think the same criticisms can be made of intelligent design with the flightless cormorant as they can with the penguin. Now, the next two, and this is the final bit, I'm going to compare two animals that I think are beautiful. And this is a cheetah and a gazelle. Now, the reason I'm comparing those two is that the cheetah is built so it can catch the gazelles, and the gazelles are built so they can escape the cheetah. In a sense, there's sort of, as Richard Dawkins would say, a sort of arms race going on there in evolution. Now, when you look at a cheetah, it is a beautiful animal, and you can understand intelligent design to say, look, it's perfectly designed to do what it does. It's built for speed, that's quite obvious. It's lightly built, it's quite different from the rest of the great cats, like lions, who are much heavier, and even leopards are heavier than cheetahs. And it's built beautifully. It's got a small head, which is important for speed. It's got very large nostrils for which you can, when it runs so fast, it can take in large quantities of oxygen. It's got very strong back legs and front legs, and it's got a very flexible spine. Actually, when you look at them running, they can bring their back legs up to their front legs and bound that way. And they also have a very big tail, a very heavy tail, and that serves as some sort of balance rudder that helps them change direction, which they need to do. Now, you could probably say of a cheetah that it has evolved to enable it to catch a certain type of prey to survive. Now, I talk about gazelles. Gazelles are part of the small antelope family, which includes probably Springboks and Impalas and a few other species. And they are not natural prey for the other large cats, like lions and leopards. They can get them if they're sick, opportunistically. Hyenas can't catch impalas. Now, the reason that the big cats leave the small antelopes alone is because they're small, they're not enough food, and they're actually too fast for them. A healthy impala can easily outrun lions and hyenas and leopards, even leopards. So that's why this is a niche for prey that cheetahs can exploit, if you like. However, when you look at the gazelle, for example, which is a very beautiful animal, I must say, they're built for speed also. They're not as fast as a cheetah. A cheetah can apparently, in short distances, get up to 100 kilometres an hour, which is pretty fast. They're the fastest land animal. But an impala has a few other qualities that has evolved to enable it to escape being the prey of a cheetah. They're fast. They're not as fast, but a cheetah can't run for very long. It gets exhausted very quickly when it goes so fast. So it's got to be positioned exactly in the right position, a short distance from its prey, the gazelle or the impala, whatever it is. And it's almost a surprise, and at that point they can probably outrun the animal. But if in fact the antelope sees the cheetah and a healthy one, it's got very little chance of catching it. They've evolved a few qualities that enable them to get away from cheetahs. So one quality is that they have much greater staying power, if you like. They can run fast for a longer period, so they can, in distance, outrun a cheetah. They're built like that. They also have a habit of what we call stolting or pronking. And they lift their forelegs off the ground all at once, and they can change direction very quickly. And these pronking activities can lift the animal a few meters off the ground, and it can, and it can go in a different direction. So it makes it difficult for any animal to catch it. The cheetah does have, because of its very heavy tail, the quality to change direction quickly too, because of the impala. And but I think you could probably say that a healthy impala, gazelle, springbok would not, if he saw the cheetah, the cheetah couldn't catch it. I mean, they're always the cheetah has to more or less get it by surprise and outrun it that way in a short distance. If it doesn't do that, it can't catch it. Of course, there are, older animals and younger animals and disabled animals that it can catch. The point I'm trying to make about all this is that there is a sort of, Richard Dawkins called it an arms race. There sort of is an interaction in evolution between these two animals. One requires one quality, the animal has to acquire another quality to escape it. So there's what we call a symbiotic relationship here between the two species that drives their evolution. It's not just the climate, it's not just the climate, it's not just the environment that it lives in. It actually is their need to survive. The cheetah needs to survive so it can eat these prey. The impala needs to be able to at least escape, in most cases escape the cheetah. So their evolution is actually interrelated. I hope you understand what I mean by that. The other point about it is how does intelligent design explain this? I've never heard of it. I've read a few books on intelligent design, and I've never heard of how they explain this sort of symbiotic relationship that much. You might correct me and make some comments. I'll be interested in doing it. The question that rises in my mind is, who is the intelligent designer? Who does he like? Does he like cheetahs or does he like gazelles? I mean, whose side is he on? Why? So that's a question that asks me, that I ask quite a lot. Anyway, intelligent design is still, quite well off. It's got an institute in Seattle, in Washington, the Discovery Institute. It's got lots of money. It actually produces books on intelligent design and anti-evolutionary books. There's one particular book called Pandas and People, one of their first productions, and it was designed as a textbook to be taught in schools alongside evolution. And intelligent design also has enough money to support the idea of teaching in science classes intelligent design alongside evolution. Now, they haven't, in most cases they don't win that battle, but they've nearly got there in some southern states of the United States. Now, that's all I want to say for this video, which has turned out to be long. But I hope you keep listening to future videos. I'll be talking about topics like this, and that you subscribe, and that thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your presence very much.